In the heart of a bustling city, there lies a quiet street that holds a dark secret. Baker Street, known to many for its quaint shops and friendly faces, is haunted by a sinister presence, one that has struck terror into the hearts of its residents for decades. They call it the Silent Stalker of Baker Street. It began years ago, on a foggy autumn night. A young woman named Emily was walking home from work. The streets were unusually deserted, and the fog was so thick she could barely see a few feet ahead. As she hurried along, she felt it, a creeping sensation, as if someone was watching her. She quickened her pace, her heart pounding louder with every step. But no matter how fast she walked, the feeling of being followed grew stronger. Suddenly she heard it, the faint sound of footsteps echoing through the fog. Emily stopped and turned, but saw nothing. The street was empty. She tried to shake off the fear and continued walking, but the footsteps returned, this time closer, more menacing. Panic set in. She broke into a run, her breath coming in ragged gasps, her eyes darting around for any sign of her pursuer. She reached her apartment building, fumbling with her keys as the footsteps grew louder, almost right behind her. Just as she unlocked the door and slammed it shut, she caught a glimpse of a shadowy figure standing at the end of the hallway. It was tall, its eyes glowing with a malevolent light, and its mouth twisted into a sinister grin. Emily screamed and backed away, her hands trembling as she bolted the door. The footsteps stopped, but the terror lingered. That night marked the beginning of a series of horrifying encounters on Baker Street. The residents spoke of a figure that moved silently through the fog, stalking its prey with relentless determination. It seemed to know their every move, appearing in the shadows, just out of sight, but always there, watching, waiting. A local shopkeeper, Mr. Thompson, was the next to encounter the silent stalker. One evening, as he was closing up his store, he noticed the street outside had fallen eerily silent. The usual chatter and traffic noises were gone, replaced by an oppressive silence. He stepped outside, looking around nervously. The fog had rolled in, thick and impenetrable. As he locked the door, he felt a cold breath on the back of his neck. He turned quickly, but saw nothing. Just as he was about to dismiss it as his imagination, he heard it, a low, guttural whisper, calling his name. He spun around, his eyes wide with fear, and there it was. The shadowy figure, standing just a few feet away, its eyes glowing with a malevolent light. Mr. Thompson backed away, but the figure advanced, its footsteps silent, its grin widening. He stumbled and fell, his heart racing as the figure loomed over him. Just as it reached out, the streetlights flickered and the figure vanished, leaving Mr. Thompson shaking and drenched in sweat. The stories spread, and the fear grew. No one was safe. The silent stalker seemed to have no pattern, no motive, only an insatiable hunger for terror. It would appear in the dead of night, its eyes glowing, its grin wide and sinister. Children would wake screaming, claiming to have seen it at their windows. Pets would cower and whimper, sensing its presence. One night, a group of teenagers decided to confront the silent stalker. Armed with flashlights and a sense of bravado, they ventured into the foggy streets of Baker Street. They laughed and joked, trying to mask their fear, but as the night wore on, the atmosphere grew heavy with dread. They split up, each taking a different route, determined to catch a glimpse of the figure. Minutes turned into hours, and the laughter faded, replaced by nervous whispers. Suddenly, one of them screamed. The others rushed to find their friend, but it was too late. He was standing frozen, his flashlight on the ground, his eyes wide with terror. He pointed shakily to a dark alley where the figure stood, its eyes glowing, its grin wider than ever. The teenagers fled, their bravado shattered. They never spoke of that night again, but the fear lingered. The silent stalker had made its presence known, and Baker Street would never be the same. Even today, the legend persists. The residents of Baker Street live in constant fear, knowing that the silent stalker is always watching, always waiting. Some say it's the spirit of a wronged soul, seeking vengeance. Others believe it's a manifestation of the town's darkest fears. So, if you ever find yourself on Baker Street after dark, be careful. Keep to the well-lit areas and never venture into the fog alone. For in the shadows, the silent stalker waits, its eyes glowing with malevolence, its grin wide and sinister. And if you hear footsteps behind you, whatever you do, don't look back.